Today's story is another encounter in this series called Seeing is Believing. Experiencing supernatural occurrences or things we can't quite understand is something that can be downright terrifying, but to experience it alone, well, that's another story. Jordan would run into several events after moving into his new cabin in Arizona. From these shadowy figures flying around his car at night to a man he picked up on the side of the road that possibly came to his property and terrorized him. Could this event have been another Skinwalker encounter or something else? Stick around to find out. Hi, I'm Zach and welcome to Rooted Expeditions. Hit that thumbs up and let's dive right into today's story. In 2014, Jordan packed up his stuff and decided to move out to Arizona where there was a cabin. In fact, I believe this is the same cabin that he stayed in while he had that possible encounter with his friend. This cabin sat on about 15 acres of land. It had a built-in garage, a full loft bedroom, a living room, a working bathroom with a solar shower and flushing toilets, and it had a small kitchen. Oh yeah, and it had a pretty nice little workshop in the garage. This was a perfect little place for Jordan to get away from the outside world. All he had to do is get some supplies from the store and he could stay at this cabin and not be bothered by anyone. He would be able to go on some solo adventures around the area, along with hiking around the cabin's 15 acres of land. He would also work on writing his short story, which he published in 2015, called The Man with the Schofields. When Jordan would go on his daily adventures or hikes, he would say that he always felt like there was eyes on him, watching him, but when he would look around to see who was watching, there was no one there. One day he was traveling alone through the Four Corner region to go hiking or to go on his adventures, which he would state that it was one of the eeriest situations that he has ever been in. Now, if you didn't know what the Four Corner region is, it's the edge of the northern Arizona, southern Utah, and western Colorado, along with northwestern New Mexico, and these states would come together, giving its name the Four Corner region. Where this destination was, he had to drive down a very long stretch of road, a very infamous road that is known for its paranormal activity, though it's not as famous as the nearby Route 666. Yes, if you didn't know, that is real. Now, to describe the scene, as he was traveling at night on this particular road, which was a long stretch of road that went on for miles and miles and that went through the Four Corner region. It was a pretty desert place and there were hardly any trees and pretty much a dry place that was inhabitable. There were no cars on this stretch of road that Jordan was on. In fact, while traveling for several hours, he didn't see any cars or any life at all. He took a turn on this road, and as soon as he turned down this road, these large, shadowy figures started swooping around and down and back and forth around his car as he was driving. At first, he thought that they were bats or some kind of nocturnal birds that he wasn't aware of, as he was still pretty new to the area. So he didn't really think much about it and he just kept on driving. About 5 minutes or so as these bats or shadowy things flying around the car as he was driving, more and more seemed to accumulate around his car. They were even keeping up with the speed that he was driving. So he decided to push the car faster and was able to get up to 120 miles an hour, and they were still keeping up with his car, flying around and staying with his car. Then he slowed down to about 15 miles per hour, almost to a creeping slow drive, and still nothing changed. These things kept flying around his car. As he was driving and trying to focus on the road so that he wouldn't take the car off the road or crash, he got a couple glances at these winged creatures, and these things had a wingspan of over several feet. He just kept on driving, and after about 10 minutes or so, these things just disappeared as quickly as they appeared. Now, to fast forward, on his way back from his trip, he was going through the same area where he saw those bat-winged creatures. Close by that, he made a pit stop to get some food. He saw a Navajo museum, and Jordan, being the history nut as he is, wanted to check it out, and so he did. He spent about 30 to 45 minutes there, and then he got in his car and he went on about his way. After being on the road for a bit, he came across a hitchhiker, and it was the first person or sign of life he has seen in hours, aside from the pit stop that he made to get food. As soon as he was coming up on this hitchhiker, he started to slow down, and as he passed this hitchhiker, he noticed how heavy his gear was, and he also noticed that this looked like a Native American man. So Jordan pulled over to the side of the road, and as he was looking in his rearview mirror, he could see that the hitchhiker started to run towards his car as this man noticed that Jordan was stopping for him. When the hitchhiker got up to his car, Jordan asked the man if he needed a ride, and the man said, "Yes, I do." The man asked if he could have a lift for the next 30 miles or so, and Jordan agreed, and so Jordan got out and helped the man load his stuff in the trunk of his car. They both got in the car and they just continued driving forward. Over the next hour and a half or so, they shared some pretty nice conversations. At that time, Jordan found out that he was a full-blooded Navajo and went by the Christian name of Raymond. Now, Raymond claimed to be well known in the area, and he lived in this region his entire life. Raymond was somewhere in his 50s, but he would never tell Jordan his actual age. After driving several miles, when they were approaching this town, Raymond asked to be dropped off near this underpass. Jordan pulled off the major highway that Raymond and him have been traveling on for several miles to let him out and near this underpass. Before, Jordan had bought this new camping gear along with a tent that he wasn't really too fond of, so he actually offered it to the man to have for his journey. Plus, this was just the kind of guy Jordan was. He loved to help people out. What happened next is quite strange. As soon as Jordan drove off and went on his way, he looked in the rearview mirror to look at the man to see how he was doing, but when he looked, Raymond was gone. It's like he just vanished. Now, where Jordan dropped off this man, there was no way he could have disappeared like that, especially that fast. But anyways, Jordan didn't think much of it and he just kept on driving. By this time, he was already close to his cabin and he was ready to get back to the cabin, kick back and relax from his adventure or this trip. Okay, let me just back up for a second and start off by saying that while Jordan and this man, Raymond, were in the car together, Jordan offered and said to this man that he could stay on his property for a bit if he wanted to. He even gave the man directions to take to get to this cabin. If he was from the region, as he stated, it wouldn't be hard for the man to find this cabin. Now, Jordan wasn't sure if the man was coming to the cabin or to his property or not because he didn't really state. This would soon look and seem like a bad mistake. Jordan got back to his cabin, got settled in, and that same night, unsettling things began to take place at the cabin. And for the first time since he has been staying at this cabin, which was several weeks already, he heard what sounded like coyotes on his property. But the coyotes weren't just on his property. They were right outside of his cabin. What were they doing there, and why were they so close? He could hear them run around outside of the cabin as if they were running circles around the cabin. Jordan's first thought was maybe they chased a wounded animal that went under the cabin and they're just trying to get their prey or their food. And that's why they were there. For half the night, they would make that crying like sound that coyotes usually make, and also at the same time they're running around this cabin. Then that same night, later on, while he was laying in bed, he heard something that he would never forget. He started to hear scratching on the exterior door, like claws raking down on the door. This paralyzing fear started to go into effect with Jordan. Something was trying to get inside this cabin, but why? Jordan wouldn't lie, and if you ask him, he would tell you without a doubt that he was terrified. And this door was a really thin wooden door. It wouldn't take much to bust down this door. So you can only imagine how truly terrifying this was for him, not knowing if the door would hold the force of whatever was on the other side. Frozen in fear, Jordan somehow woke up and it was already morning. He must have fell asleep through this terrifying night that he was having. Jordan would do his morning rituals around the cabin and the property, and he could see several coyote prints around the cabin along with some unusual prints, but they were covered up by more coyote prints. As he was going around the property, checking these tracks out, or just trying to make sense of what happened the night before, his curiosity grew. And then immediately, it hit him. He ran back to where this thin exterior wooden door was, and when he got to this door, his heart dropped when he looked at this door. There were these deep, long scratch marks engraved in the door. As a longtime independent researcher on folklore, mythology, and indigenous cultures from all over the world, including Native American folklore, now having a really good idea what this could have been, he didn't want to admit of what it could be. So he tried to keep calm and keep himself together. Because Jordan, with these clues, thought this could be the famous Skinwalker that is said to be common in that area. He tried to track down the tracks of where these coyotes came from, but couldn't find the source to where they came from. It's as if the tracks just appeared on his property near the cabin out of thin air. Now, I forgot to mention that Jordan is a really experienced outdoorsman. He knows how to read trails and signs along trails that are outside and things that are in the woods. His dad has taught him a lot over the years when growing up, and Jordan would also learn a lot from the years exploring different places around the nation, hiking and camping in the wilderness. And on top of that, alone. So when he said that he couldn't find out where the source of these tracks come from, it really makes you wonder. We won't get into every little detail to why Jordan thinks this could have been a werewolf or a skinwalker, which is actually thought to be a human twisted by greed and dark magic, and probably not a creature at all. And in fact, the skinwalkers are better known amongst members of the Navajo Nation than any other in the country, and are said to frequent the area for centuries. Now, Jordan will claim that he's not an expert on the skinwalker folklore, but he did note that he feels pretty sure that Raymond and possibly maybe his friends visited him that night and would visit him yet one more time. On the third night after picking and dropping Raymond, the Navajo man, off, the coyotes and their crying sounds came back, and they were running circles around this cabin again. This time, not trying to understand what is happening and trying to stay calm and keep himself together, Jordan, dealing with paranormal and demonic encounters before in the past, started to notice that whatever was outside this cabin had this very strong and bad evil presence to it. So he started to pray for protection, and these coyotes left. And since then, he had never seen or heard them again. Did these coyotes or things pick up on his prayer or energy? Who knows? Again, this one is one of those encounters you really have to put yourself in Jordan's shoes to really understand and feel what happened to him. The next event, which would be that possession we talked about, would be the last straw for Jordan, along with the many strange and creepy incidents that happened there at that cabin. What do you think happened that night? Was it a skinwalker or something else? What was those bat-winged creatures? Let me know in the comments below. Credit for this story goes to Jordan Tyler. If you want to hear more, you can check out his book, Seeing is Believing. Hit that thumbs up. Peace. I love you. And as always, God bless.